Well, hey, Becoming Me, I'm so excited for today's Becoming story because as you will find out, Jenny is a longtime, not only friend, but mentor for me. So Jenny, hey, welcome to Becoming Me.
Thank you so much. This is so fun. I can't believe it's taken us this long to do this.
Well, I'm super honored. And for those of you watching, I told Jenny before, I'm actually a little nervous to film her Becoming story because as I'm going to share with you, Jenny has literally been a mentor for me since I was in high school. So as a junior in high school, my dad has been a pastor my entire life, and he found Jenny's blog, and she was an executive in the church world. He said, Emily, you've got to read this lady's blog. So I read Jenny's blog and am instantly inspired by her. So I shoot her an email as a high school kid. And I think the question I asked her was, could I see your job description? What do you do? And just like looking back at it, it's crazy, right? She emailed me back, and from that point, we just created this email dialogue. She was always so gracious to answer questions and invite me to ask her questions. And then throughout the years, she just kept checking up on me and my journey. So then after graduating from college, she moved to California. I moved to Las Vegas. We ended up meeting on the West Coast. What turned from me tweeting at her and asking if we could get coffee became a dinner conversation, and we've just been friends ever since. So I can confidently say I would not be the Emily that I am today. Becoming Me probably wouldn't be what it is without Jenny. So Jenny, thank you so much.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's so much been my joy. It's so fun to think back. I was telling my sister this story the other day about you reaching out as a high schooler, and she just loved it, because my sister, we all worked together with the Foresight Group. And so it was just fun. It's fun to reflect on just those little moments of being intentional on both of our sides. You were intentional to reach out because you wanted to learn and grow. And for whatever reason, God gave me the great prompt to respond and to connect. And so I'm so grateful for it. So fun.
I'm grateful for it too. And thanks for sharing your Becoming story today. So to kick it off, why don't you just share a couple fun facts about Jenny?
Yes. Well, I was thinking about this because I'm a little quirky. And I do have a lot of things that I particularly love. It's kind of fun that we're recording this on December 1st because Christmas, I am like a Christmas freak, you all. I mean, I was tempted to move this to in front of my Christmas tree because if I can do anything in front of my Christmas tree, I'm going to.
Yes.
And I have 5 of them in my house, just to give you a little.
That's amazing.
It's December 1st, and I have 5 trees up, and there are still conversations of, should I add more trees? Should I add more decorations? It's a little obsessive. Along with that, Emily, you share this passion with me, is my secret indulgence is Hallmark Christmas movies.
Yes.
And I mean, they're totally predictable. They're somewhat cheesy, but they're happy and they're Christmassy, and the story always finishes beautifully. So judge if you want, but the Hallmark Christmas movies are a little bit of a joy. I am drinking from my Christmas mug.
I love it.
As you can see, and I love penguins. So this this mug is not only Christmas mug, but it has penguins on it. So I do love penguins. And most importantly, in this mug is tea, not coffee. I have never had more than a little bitty taste of coffee in my whole life. I have no desire to ever drink coffee, but I am a total tea snob. So I have the perfect cup of tea, freshly brewed, in this mug for our conversation today. So,
and what type of tea do you drink?
So today, I do have a few different favorites. Today, this is my absolute favorite. It's Countess Grey. That is from Fortnum and Mason, based out of England.
Okay.
And you cannot buy it in the United States. So this is I can have it shipped over from England. So my husband does this for me once a year, and he will pay the international shipping to buy me a case of tea. We just got our shipment last week. And he pays, this is how dearly my husband loves me, is he pays for my international shipping for me to get my favorite tea. And so it is deeply.
I love it.
Yeah. So those are just some of the funny, quirky things about Catron.
Well, so to go along with your quirky things, with it being December 1st, I had to get a red cup because obviously Christmas, and I'm drinking coffee. But
Of course you are.
I know. That's not a surprise.
Where we part ways. But
Yes.
I still love you.
I do every time I drink tea. I'm like, Jenny would be proud. She would be so proud right now because I'm drinking tea. I love it.
So good. So good.
Well, and also, so share with us a little bit, and we'll talk more later, but you are the founder and leader of the Foresight Group. So what is the Foresight Group, and what's the vision with that?
Yeah, so I launched the Foresight Group a little over a year ago, about a year and a half ago now. And it really has always been a big part of my heart and my passion. At the end of my day, and you'll learn this as I share my story, I am deeply committed to the health and development of leaders. And I believe that all of us have leadership influence. I think leadership begins with influence. How we steward influence determines the trajectory of our leadership. And I think we would all agree we need healthy, good leaders in our lives, in our worlds, in our society. And I'm just deeply, deeply passionate about the health and growth of leaders. And so that's the purpose of the Foresight Group. And with that, we do leadership coaching, both. I do some one-on-one, some online groups, some in-person groups. You've been a part of all of those, Emily. We also do consulting with organizations, helping them diagnose both the strategy and the culture side of their organizations and their teams, helping both that leader lead well and the team lead better. And so that's kind of the essence of the Foresight Group. But at the heart of it is that we just want leaders to be thriving and healthy, because if leaders are thriving and healthy, then we think what happens in their organizations, what happens in their families becomes just this healthy overflow. So that's kind of the heart and passion behind it.
Absolutely. So good. I love the Foresight Group. And for those of you who potentially are putting some dots together, I have the privilege of being on Jenny's team with the Foresight Group too. Yes, so much fun. And often you'll see us posting about different coaching groups with the Foresight Group. And now you can put a face with the name of who is leading that. So let's dive into your story. You know, you mentioned, we'll hear you unpack some things about why leadership is important to you. So just take the next few minutes and unpack what has made Jenny who Jenny is today.
Yeah. And, you know, it's so funny because, you know, all of our stories, I deeply believe that God uses everything in our lives and he can use that for good. And, you know, I grew up in the Midwest. I actually just returned to the state of Wisconsin where I was born and raised. I always swore I would never move back. And here I am. I wish we don't have any snow right now, or I'd move my camera to the window to show you, but we've had little dustings, but we haven't gotten any significant snow yet. But I was born and raised here, small blue collar town. Neither of my parents went to college. And our growing up was a little rough. My parents divorced when I was 5. They actually, I was an unplanned pregnancy. My mom was 17 when I was born. I walked down the aisle with my parents. My mom was 7 months pregnant with me when my parents got married. And, but so that things just started rough. You know, it was just kind of a rough start for them. And so that resulted in a divorce 5 years later after they had my sister. So mom was 23 with 2 children and divorced. And so really complicated kind of early part of our story. I think I very early on learned to be independent and learned to kind of take care of myself, because that was just survival. You know, my mom, as a 23-year-old single mom of 2, was, you know, trying to figure it out and make it happen. But oftentimes that meant, you know, that she couldn't be as present. And so I learned to be fiercely independent really young. And that kind of has just been obviously a part of my story then all the way through. Fast forward to, I was 8 years old and my great uncle invited us to church one Sunday morning. And I had no idea why we were going to church. I kind of was like, I didn't know much about church, had never really been to a church except maybe for a wedding. But we were getting dressed. Mom said, put your dress on and we're going to church. And I thought, I get to wear a fancy dress. This sounds awesome, you know? So I pulled out my Christmas dress, and it was the one that had all the tulle under it that made me as wide as I was tall. And I thought, this sounds awesome. Let's go to church. So I helped my sister get dressed and we went to church that Sunday. And my mom came to faith as a result of getting involved in that church, and led us to Christ as well. And so that became a really critical turning point in our family story as far as faith becoming key to who we are. And And I really resonated with that. I think I found so much hope in the gospel and hope in a church community. So as a little girl, my heart just connected there, and I had opportunities to take piano and voice lessons from my great uncle. And, he would surprise me on a Sunday night at church and say, "Hey, you're going to sing tonight." And I would be terrified because I'm a firstborn, very A-type, overachiever who needs to know exactly what's happening, when it's happening, how it's happening. And I have to have everything kind of figured out before I can do something. And so I credit my great Uncle Tom with being the person who taught me to be a little flexible, to be a little spontaneous, which I'm still not terribly spontaneous, but to kind of roll with it. And he would say, "You're going to sing tonight." And I would get up on stage and he'd play a chord and I'd be like, "Oh, that's what I'm singing." And so I think those early moments really were shaping me for some of the work I do now. I don't sing on stage anymore. Now I speak. But I think, there were things like that I look back on and I see how certain people in my life saw potential and gifts in me and called that out. And so Uncle Tom, he passed away probably 15 years ago now. And I hope he smiles when he sees me getting to communicate on stage and share with leaders, because I think it's very much a part of his influence and kind of giving me those opportunities so young that helped me be comfortable and helped me see those possibilities. So there were some moments like that. And then when I was 13, I was looking at the back of a DC Talk CD cover. And some of you will be old enough to remember DC Talk, or CDs for that matter. Some of you are too young, but just trust me that in that day, DC Talk was the Christian artist to be listened to, right? And I was looking at the back of it, and there was something in the byline that said Forefront Records, and I thought, well, I wonder what they do. Because by this time I was discovering, music is kind of a hobby for me. I'm not necessarily like extremely talented. I can carry a tune, but I'm not going to be the next, Mariah Carey. And so I decided that there's more of this business side of me, and I need to kind of figure out what that was about. And I saw this Forefront Records on the back of a CD cover, and I thought, there must be a group of people in Nashville, Tennessee that help make this happen. Like there must be people behind the scenes helping make this happen, that I get a CD in my hands that I can listen to. So I decided I wanted to work at Forefront Records. And I don't know why I even thought that was possible. I didn't have a clue how I was going to do it. Again, small town Midwest kid, parents who didn't go to college. Nobody knew how to help me pursue that dream. I just said, I'm going to do this. So I'm going to figure it out. So I did. And I actually went to college in Tennessee, and at the end of my sophomore year, I had reached out to Forefront, and they offered me an internship at the record company. So I thought I had arrived, like I had made it. So sure enough, I went that fall and did an internship at Forefront Records that turned into a job that ended up being my first stage of my career for 9 years. And I was able to do marketing and brand development for a ton of Christian artists. Learned so much in that season. And one of the things I look back on at that part of my story is, I thought that I was going to be a music business executive. When I was 13 and I looked at that Forefront Records label, on the back of that CD cover, I thought, this is what I'm doing for life. I thought I'd be a CEO of a record company and just be ruling the world of the music business. And about 9 years into my career there, my husband and I were a part of a new church plant, and the senior pastor there kept saying, "Hey, if you leave the music business, I need you to come and work with me here." And I thought, what would I do at a church? You're absolutely crazy. I was a business major in college. I've been doing marketing and brand development. Like, what would I do at a local church? I mean, I just thought he'd lost his mind. But at the same time, God was kind of doing some stirring in my heart. And those seasons where there's something God's trying to tell you, and you're a bit resistant because you're happy with what is. I was climbing the ladder like a champ. Like I had gotten promotion after promotion after promotion. Things were good. We'd just gone through a big corporate merger, and I kept my job, and a lot of my peers lost their job. And so I was like, I'm good. Things are good. And every time my pastor would reach out about that, I'd be like, I think I'm supposed to be paying attention to this. And finally my husband said, well, Jen, will you just go talk to him and find out what he's thinking? You know, like, because I was so like worked up about it. He's like, just go have a conversation, like figure out what this is all about. So over 6 months of conversations with the pastor of that church, I really sensed that God was calling me to leave the music business and to go into ministry full time. Wow. And that was that was, Emily, that was like one of the most challenging steps for me, because you and I know the language of the Enneagram. Those of you who are familiar with Enneagram, it's a personality assessment that kind of, you know, there's a number of different personality assessments. It just happens to be one that I really love. And on that assessment, I'm a 3, which is the achiever. And so, you know, significance and success and like accomplishment are really important to how I'm wired. And this is probably one of those first memorable moments of going, wow, can I trust God with something I'm not in control of, you know? And of course I had other moments of that, but this one was pretty significant because I was on a career trajectory that looked like success. And in fact, when I made the decision to leave the music business to go into ministry full time, I had a friend of mine say, you're committing career suicide. What are you doing? You know, because I was doing well. I had a good reputation. I was climbing the ladder. I was next in line for like executive level seat. And I was 27 or 28, you know, I was super young. And, but you know, I just knew that God was tugging me to look at something else. So I made the decision to leave that. And part of what was going on in that decision was I really had to wrestle with, it wasn't so much the music business. What I was discovering, and there was a big discovery process in this, is that I really loved aligning teams around a goal. Because again, part of the problem was going, what would I do in a church? And this was a moment of clarity for me to recognize, and it really was a moment where I recognized my true calling to equip leaders, because I realized it wasn't so much that I loved the music business, although I did. It was that I loved working with the team, and I loved helping align a team around a vision to accomplish this great outcome that we believed in deeply, and helping draw out the gifts of each individual on the team and helping each one of them succeed in accomplishment of our overarching goal. Like that was what like brought me to life. And that was my aha, is that I saw I could do that for my local church that I was so passionate about, and obviously something I believed really deeply in. And I would say that moment solidified my passion for developing leaders. I think that was when it became a conscious awareness that I'm like, oh, this is what I really love. It's not that I love being a music business person or, you know, the aspiration to be an executive in the music business. It's I love helping teams thrive. I love helping each individual understand their unique God-given gifts and how that connects to the mission and the vision of the organization they're a part of. And then seeing it's like the master orchestrator, like making it all come together and happen. So that was a big aha moment, and I think a really big part of my story. And so I went into ministry full time and began just really leading in the context of the church, and learned a whole lot, made a ton of mistakes. I came in like a bulldozer. I'm serious, like I feel sorry for the first handful of staff that worked for me, because I came in from a corporate environment. So I came in just, you know, here we go, here's what's gotta happen, here's where we need to go. I mean, you know, just go. And like church culture, woo, you know, so I think that's when the awareness of how much emotional intelligence needed to grow in me, you know, kind of came to the forefront. I was like, okay, the relational side of my leadership really needs to be developed. I've really got to figure out how to lead, not just from a strategic side and visionary side, but I have to really learn what it means to lead relationally and spiritually. And so there's a whole nother side of me that God began to refine and work on in the context of that. So spent 9 years at that church, and then moved out to the West Coast and spent another couple years at another church helping with their multi-site initiative and all of that. Another big stretch for me in my personal growth and development, because I kind of went kicking and screaming. I didn't want to leave, and yet it was clear God was calling me to it. And totally different culture that shaped me in other ways, and was a great season. And then all along the way, I had been doing writing and speaking. That had just kind of been snowballing, the opportunities to kind of speak on leadership, and the opportunities to write some books. And then ultimately that got me to today, where I get to do that full time as part of the Foresight Group. So
I love it.
What did I miss in there, Emily?
You covered it so well. And I love how even in each different season and point along the way of your journey, you discovered more about who God made Jenni to be. And so it was never even about the job you were in, where you lived, if you were married or not married, but along the way, you discovered and picked up pieces about you and what makes you you. I think that's cool and so relevant for all of our journeys, because we're all learning, we're all growing. Some of us might be in the seat where we're just starting our career, and we're where you were, that we want to be the executive and this is what we're going to do forever. And God might be nudging on all of us. He is nudging on all of our hearts that we're all growing, and what our end destination might be right now might not be the end destination. And that's okay. But what we learn along the way is the gold, like the really good stuff. So funny that you mentioned your books. You can actually see one right behind you, The 4 Dimensions, which I'm super excited about, because even when you talked about growing your relational side with the strategy side of your leadership, you dive into that in the 4 dimensions, and how there are 4 dimensions of our leadership, and the sweet spot is leading from the middle of all 4, and not being hard or heavy on one side or the other. So check out Jenni's book, 4 Dimensions. We'll have the links for that in this post as well. And you started to share some wisdom for us on our journeys, but if you were sitting across from another woman having tea and just chatting by a Christmas tree, or during commercial break of a Hallmark movie, and you're encouraging her on her own becoming journey, what would you say?
Yeah, so good, Emily, and you kind of referenced this. I think the thing that I'm learning, and I know this is one of those things God's going to continue to work on in my heart and in my story, is that just to be open and to be present with what he's doing now. I think there's and I think we have to live in the tension of, having a vision and having a sense of where we're going and where we feel called to. Because every point of my journey, I've often had that, it was that I wanted to be a record company executive, or then, when I was in 3rd grade, I wanted to write a book. I thought that dream would never come to fruition. And then to see God bring that opportunity to pass, so beautiful, right? And, so we have some of these dreams and these goals and these kind of ideas in our heads. And I think those are God-given. I think that God gave me that passion, that heart to be a music business executive, because in chasing that dream, he was able to use that story, and he pivoted me into something else that he had for me. But I probably wouldn't have been willing to go where he was leading me next without that first stop along the way. And I thought that stop was the destination, and it was just a stop. And so I would encourage all of you that, obviously I hope that you're praying through and you're asking God to give you insight on the dreams and the goals that are in your heart, that they are aligned with his, right? But just hold them loosely too, that they are not probably the destination. They are just a stop on the journey. And I think, and I'm trying to show this, get this in the camera, but this is one of those visuals that's really valuable for me, is that our job, I believe, as followers of God, is to hold and steward the things that he gives us today, the opportunities, the experiences, the gifts and the talents that you have and are developing. Like, your job is to hold those and to steward those, to be a caretaker of those things. And my tendency by my nature is to put a death grip on those things and to try to manage, manipulate, control, and force it and make it all work and happen according to my plan. And I have to be constantly reminded that actually my job is to just hold it faithfully and to allow God to guide that and allow God to lead me. And sometimes he pivots and he shifts the direction, and he takes those gifts and those experiences and those talents and moves them into something else that he has for me. And I've got to be open and obedient to that. At the same time, my job isn't to go, well, it's all God's, he'll figure it out. I just, whatever will be, will be. I don't believe in that. I think God calls us to partner with him, which I think is one of the most beautiful things in this world, is that God chooses to work with us and in us and through us. that is like the most humbling and the most beautiful thing that I can kind of comprehend, is that the God of the universe, the person who created me, is deeply longs to work in and through me. And so that stewardship posture, I think, is one that I have to keep in front of me. And I would just encourage all of you that just hold gently, and those things that God has given you, steward them faithfully, and be sensitive to when he's leading you and shifting the world around you, because he, even in those seasons that are challenging or difficult, and the year before I launched the Foresight Group was a really challenging year. And I was really wrestling with God, what is the point of this? What is the purpose in this? And it was hard to see in it. And I just had to force myself to be faithful to what was, even though I wanted so much more and I had so many other aspirations and so many other dreams and goals. I had to be faithful to what was in front of me. And then, of course, you see that in hindsight and you go, okay, God, that's what you were doing in that season. So just remember that. Remember that you're going to have moments of flourishing where you're going to just feel like you are in your sweet spot. You are thriving. You are seeing so many things happen that you're so excited for. And then you're going to have seasons that feel really lean and that don't make sense. And my challenge would be just stay faithful in those seasons, because you will realize the fruit of that season. It will be down the road somewhere, but you will eventually recognize the fruit of that season, the purpose of that season. So don't abdicate in that moment. Just stay faithful. I'm preaching to the choir because I'm learning this, I feel like, daily. But what I do know is I continue to see God's faithfulness in that and in my story. And I'm so grateful for that.
So good. I vividly remember the first time you shared that analogy with me was when we were having dinner on the West Coast. And I was asking you, like, how do you trust God with hard stuff? And this is what I want to do. And I was living very much here. And you reminded me to live here. And it's so true. And it's cool because I've seen you live that through every single season. And you've challenged me to live that through every season. Yeah, it's the only way to live. So thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned earlier the Foresight Group, and we have some cool coaching groups coming up in 2018.
Yes.
So if someone wanted to connect with the coaching group, or perhaps, reach out to you for personal coaching or coaching for their organization, where would they go to find you?
Yeah, awesome. And we would love to connect with you. The first thing you need to know is that at our website is getforesight.com. The word get, the number 4, the word sight.com. And you can sign up there for our newsletter, which we do just a leadership thought every day, different kind of ideas, stories, articles, and things. So tons of just like ways to stay connected and just dive into the leadership conversation with us there. So first and foremost, just do that. Just sign up for the newsletter so you can just, hear, and from Emily and some of the other folks that are a part of our team, we're just sharing our leadership learnings and our leadership thoughts. And also just remember too, that we say leadership begins with influence. So whatever level you lead at, there is something for you at Foresight. And so I don't want you to think you have to be the senior executive or the senior leader. If you really are passionate about learning to lead well and learning to understand what it means to steward your influence well, then Foresight would be just a great resource for you. So then also at the website, we do have coaching groups that we do for leaders, women leaders, nonprofit leaders. Emily and I are working right now on an online group that's a little more cost effective, and will be a fun group. We don't have that announced yet, but we'll make sure that we tell you about it when we do. And so that's the best way to connect. And also on all social media, I'm Jenni Catron. So JenniCatron. So I'm at Jenni Catron on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all those things. So you can just find me personally that way.
And we'll have all the links for Jenni, for the Foresight Group, and for her books in this post, so you can easily click them as well. And with the holidays, like, her books would be an incredible gift to yourself and for someone else. I've read her books multiple times, and I learned something new from them every single time. So Jenni, thank you for sharing your story, who you are, who you're becoming, and then encouraging us on our journeys today. I really appreciate it.
Emily, thank you so much. And thank you for creating this space and for using your influence stewarding the things that God has put on your heart to invest in so many others. So thank you so much for that. I'm so proud of you. I love it, and love just this community that you've created at Becoming Me. So awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Jenni.